The creak of the floorboards beneath my feet is the only sound that breaks the morning silence of my house. Yes, my house. Every board, every nail, every brick was laid by these hands. 40 years ago, when my joints were still creaking louder than those floorboards, I, Willis Prescott, decided my family deserved something special. Not just a house bought with money, but a true legacy. Now I'm 65, and what's left of that family? Just these walls and memories, fading like the smoldering embers in the fireplace I'd built with my own hands on the first floor. Taking a sip of coffee from a mug with a chipped edge, Elizabeth always wanted to throw it away, but I wouldn't let her. I look out the window at the backyard. Autumn leaves swirl in the air like indecisive guests who don't know if it's time to leave. My gaze clings to the old swing I made for Nathaniel when he was 5. Now the ropes are frayed and the board is cracked from time and rain. There's no one to repair it, and there's no reason to repair it. Nathaniel hasn't swung on a swing in 39 years. I wonder if he sees her when he visits at Christmas. He used to. For the last 2 years, he hasn't even shown up for the holidays. When Elizabeth was alive, he used to at least pretend we were a family. He did it for her. And now, 5 years without Elizabeth. 5 years since I've lived in the house I built for us, and now it's just me and the occasional draft that peeks through the cracks. After she left, Nathaniel was even colder. It was as if the last thread that held us together had broken with her death. After I finish my coffee, I start to walk around the house. A daily ritual that keeps me from going crazy with loneliness. I check to see if the roof is leaking from last night's downpour, if the wallpaper Elizabeth and I glued together is peeling, if the stair railings are loose. In the bedroom, which has become too spacious for one, I stop in front of a photograph on the dresser. Our wedding. Elizabeth smiles as if the whole world lies before her, and I stand beside it with an unfamiliar tie and an expression of such sincere hope on my face that I'm even embarrassed to look at myself now. We were so young, so naive. You should see us now, Ellie, I say to the pictures. Our son doesn't even call his old dad. And here I am talking to the frame. Of course, it's not that simple. Nathaniel and I never really hit it off. I wanted him to carry on the family tradition of working with his hands, building something real. He chose numbers, spreadsheets, and air-conditioned offices. Accounting is stability, Dad, he'd say. And I heard, your life is a risk, Dad, and I don't want to live it that way. One might have accepted his choice if it weren't for those constant looks down on him. His condescending smile when I talked about the new addition to the garage. His sighs when I pulled out old tools. His obvious relief when it was time to leave this place, his childhood home, back to his sterile world of spreadsheets and calculations. And then there she was, Tasha. From the first day Nathaniel brought her over to meet her, I'd sensed the falseness. Elizabeth was still alive then, but she was already sick. Willis, give her a chance, my wife whispered to me at night, for Nathaniel's sake. And I tried. God knows I tried. But every time Tasha looked around our house with an appraising gaze, as if estimating how much it was worth, I shuddered. Elizabeth said I was just jealous of my son for another woman. Maybe, but I also know people. 40 years in building inspection, I've seen all kinds. And Tasha was one of those types who's always looking for a bargain. I run my hand over the wooden bed frame I'd made with my own hands when Elizabeth and I were waiting for Nathaniel. It's still as sturdy as the first day. The furniture in my house will outlive me, that's for sure. But who gets it all is a question that plagues me more and more every year. Legally, of course, everything goes to Nathaniel, which means Tasha. At the thought of how she would manage the house I'd built brick by brick, the house that held so many memories, I felt anxious. I go down to the kitchen and look at the clock. It's only 10 in the morning, and the day already seems endless. Before I'd be working right now, fixing something in someone's house, making sure the new building meets all safety codes. But now I'm just an old man hanging around a house too big for him. The ringing of the phone makes me wince. It's a home phone, not a cell phone. Few people know this number, mostly old friends who are fewer and fewer every year. I'm listening. My voice sounds harsh, even to my own ears. Dash, Dad? It's me, Nathaniel. His voice is one I always recognize, even though I hear it less and less. Nathaniel? Is something wrong? It's not a holiday, it's not my birthday. He doesn't just call for no reason, it must be something. Does something have to happen for me to call my father? Yes, I want to answer, but I hold back. Of course it doesn't, it's just unexpected. An awkward silence hangs on the line. I can hear Nathaniel breathing, like he's gathering his wits. Finally, he says, Tasha and I would like to come down this weekend. It's been a while. I feel my eyebrows creep upward. For the past few years, Nathaniel has been coming by himself, without his wife, and then not more than once every 6 months. And now all of a sudden, they're both going to show up? Why the honor, I asked, not hiding my suspicions. Just, he stammered, it's been a long time since we've been to your place. After Mom died. You know. Yeah, I know. I know that since Elizabeth died, Tasha's been even less secretive about her dislike of me. I know that Nathaniel increasingly took her side in our rare arguments. I know that our already strained relationship with my son has finally become a formality. Okay, I finally say. Come. When should I expect you? Saturday at lunchtime. Is that convenient? Like I've got somewhere to be. It's like my calendar is jammed with meetings and events. That's convenient. I'll be waiting. We say goodbye and I hang up. I'm thinking, why are they doing this? What's really behind this sudden visit? Maybe Nathaniel's in trouble. Financial? Health? Maybe they need money and thought the old man's father was easy prey? Or? I shake my head, pushing the paranoid thoughts away. After all, this is my son. Whatever our relationship is, he's still my blood. But the worm of doubt has already settled inside. I make my way to the living room and sit in my chair, which overlooks the driveway and part of the street, the neighbors' two-story houses, the manicured lawns, the cars in the driveways. When we first built here, the neighborhood was almost empty. Now it's a prestigious place, and the land is worth a lot of money. My lot with the house, garage, and garden could make a fortune if I sold it to developers. Maybe that's what this is all about. Maybe Tasha has finally decided it's time for the old man to move into a nursing home and sell the house. The thought makes me grip the armrests of my chair so tight my knuckles turn white. It's not going to happen. I'm going to die in this house, in this bed I made with my own hands. And if they think otherwise... The phone rings again, but this time it's a cell phone. It's Roger, an old buddy of mine from my days at the building inspector's office. He's retired now like me, but unlike me, he's doing something useful with his time. He's a part-time consultant for a real estate law firm. Will, you old dick, his loud voice sounds cheerful. How are your knees? Still protesting the stairs? Still, I grin. Roger is one of the few people I can just talk to. But I've made a deal with them. They carry me, and I don't make them run. Roger laughs, and we fall into the usual chatter of old friends. We discuss the latest city news, complain about the weather, reminisce about the old days. He talks about his grandchildren. I pretend to be interested. I don't tell him about Nathaniel's call. It's too early to be alarmed. Maybe I'm getting myself worked up for nothing. But when we finish talking and I'm alone again, the anxiety returns with renewed vigor. I circle the living room, the fireplace I laid out myself, the shelves I made for Elizabeth's books, the table where Nathaniel did his homework. Every object holds a story, every corner is steeped in memories. And they want to take it all away from me? No, I won't let them. I get up and go to the study, the small room that used to be Nathaniel's nursery and now serves as my sanctuary. This is where I keep documents, old photo albums, important papers. I open the safe, hidden behind a painting of a mountain lake. Elizabeth loved the mountains, even though we never got out there together, and pull out a folder with the deeds to the house. It's all right. The house is in my name. The will is written so that Nathaniel won't get it until after I die. But what if they have other plans? What if they try to convince me to sell the house, to move somewhere closer to them? I return the documents to the safe and close it. No, I'll be on my guard. Whatever Nathaniel and his wife are planning, they won't catch me off guard. With that thought, I go back into the kitchen and start making dinner. Simple scrambled eggs and bacon. My usual bachelor ration since Elizabeth left. She always made sure I ate right. Willis, you can't live on meat alone, she used to say as she put vegetables on my plate. Now there's no one to watch me, and I eat what I want. A small, bitter victory. As the scrambled eggs sizzle in the pan, I think about my upcoming visit. Maybe I really am too suspicious. Maybe Nathaniel just decided to mend the relationship, show his wife his childhood home. Maybe, but something inside me, some sixth sense developed from years of watching people, says be ready. They're up to something. And I'll be ready. Whatever this weekend brings, Willis Prescott will face it with his eyes open. The sound of a car pulling up made me tear myself away from the paper. Glancing at my watch, I hummed. It was exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Punctuality was the only trait Nathaniel had inherited from me. Everything else came from his mother. I rose slowly from the chair, feeling my knees protest, and walked to the window. A silver sedan stopped in the driveway. Too expensive and too new for a mid-level accountant, I thought. Tasha must have insisted on buying it. Nathaniel got out first. He was wearing a navy blue sweater and jeans, an outfit I'd never seen him wear before. He always preferred suits, even on weekends. Was it her idea? To make him look more homey for a visit to his old man father? Tasha slipped out of the car next. Tall, slender, with her raven wing-colored hair gathered into a flawless bun. Heeled shoes, a tight skirt, a blouse that looked more expensive than my entire closet. For a trip out of town, she was dressed like she was going to a business meeting. Then again, maybe she was. I stepped away from the window and headed for the door. I'd rather meet them on the doorstep than make them call. Let them know I was still the boss of my house. Nathaniel, I nodded to my son as I opened the door. Hi, Dad. He made an awkward movement, like he wanted to hug me, but he changed his mind and just held out his hand. I shook it. His palm was soft and warm, free of the calluses and scars that covered my hands. The hands of a man who had never worked physically. Tasha, I nodded to my sister-in-law. Hello, Mr. Prescott. Her smile didn't touch her eyes. How's your health? Still breathing, I grinned. Come in. Don't stand on the threshold. They came in, and I closed the door behind them, feeling as if I'd just let strangers into the house. Tasha immediately started looking around, and I noticed her gaze lingering on the antique clock Elizabeth and I had bought for our 20th wedding anniversary. I apologize for the mess, I said, though the house was clean. An old habit left over from the days when Elizabeth always apologized to guests, even if the house was shining. It's okay, Dad. Nathaniel rubbed his hands together nervously. It's, cozy. I caught a note of surprise in his voice. What, did you expect to see an old hermit's den? Did you think that without a woman in the house, I'd turned it into a pigsty? Come into the kitchen, I pointed toward the hallway. I've made dinner. Nothing fancy. Baked chicken and potatoes, salad from what I could find in the fridge. But I tried, not for them, for me, to prove I could do it on my own. Tasha walked into the kitchen first, her heels clacking on the wooden floor. I noticed her glance at the dining table, the heavy oak table I'd made with my own hands, and for a moment her mask of indifference wavered. Did she appreciate the quality of the work, or was she just estimating the cost? Make yourself comfortable, I pointed to the chairs. Dinner's almost ready. Let me help you, Dad. Nathaniel took a step toward the stove, but I waved him away. Sit down, I got it. As I pulled the chicken out of the oven, Nathaniel shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot, and Tasha continued to look around the kitchen. Her eyes lingered on the microwave, an old but serviceable one, and the coffee maker Elizabeth had bought before she'd gotten sick. Evaluating what was worth replacing, or what's worth taking away? We sat down at the table and I put the food on plates. It looks appetizing, Tasha smiled strainedly as she looked at her portion. Daddy was always a good cook, Nathaniel suddenly interjected. Remember when you used to barbecue on Sundays? I looked at my son in surprise. Does he remember? Those Sunday barbecues stopped when he was about 12 years old and claimed they were for kids. I remember, I replied discreetly. Your mother always insisted that I add more spices. She was right, Nathaniel smiled slightly. Without her, you always undersalted the meat. That little moment of understanding quickly evaporated when Tasha spoke up. Speaking of cooking, we recently installed a new stove in the kitchen. It's the latest model with touch controls. Nathaniel, tell your father. And so we were back to our usual dynamic. Tasha setting the tone, Nathaniel following. He started talking about the new stove, the repairs they'd made, the plans to change the windows. I nodded, not really listening. their lives, their money, their choices. It was none of my business. I don't know. It was a smart real estate investment. Tasha blotted her lips with a napkin. Houses in our neighborhood had gone up 15% in value in the last year. Really? I picked up a piece of chicken with my fork. Yes, the market is very active right now, she said as if she were giving a lecture. Especially in neighborhoods like yours, Mr. Prescott. This is it. It's starting. It is? I feigned disinterest. Oh yes, Tasha's revitalized. Sure, you must have heard of Mr. Hammond, your neighbor across the street. Old man Hammond. We weren't close friends, but we'd occasionally have a word when I passed his house on my evening walks. Of course we did. He was a great man. His house sold for an impressive sum. Tasha leaned forward. After his death, the children didn't divide the inheritance. They just sold the whole house. And they did the right thing. The land here is worth a lot of money. I chewed slowly, watching Tasha. Her eyes glistened like a cat's when it saw a bird. Land is always worth a lot, I shrugged, especially if there's a sturdy house on it. But it's not about the house, Tasha shook her head. Old houses are often torn down and new ones built. It's the location. And your house, Mr. Prescott, is perfectly situated. I could feel the irritation building inside me. Is that why they're here? To probe the sale of the house? My house isn't for sale, I said, cutting off another piece of chicken. Of course not. Tasha laughed a little too loudly. We're just discussing the real estate market. It's so interesting, isn't it, Nathaniel? My son looked uncomfortable, like he wanted to fall through the ground. Yes, of course, he mumbled without looking up. Speaking of real estate, Tasha continued, I recently helped a friend sort out the deeds to her father's house. It was a terrible mess. It turned out that the documents weren't properly executed, and when the old man died, there were problems with the inheritance. I looked at her carefully. The passage was as clear as glass. I hope it's all been resolved. More or less, she sighed. But it got me thinking. Nathaniel is your only son, right? So if anything happens, this beautiful house will go to him? Just like that. I almost laughed at her insolence. In case of what? I asked her again, looking her straight in the eye. Do you mean my death, Mrs. Prescott? She was not embarrassed. I mean any contingency. Health can fail at our age, can't it? Not that you look ill, she added quickly. Just sensible precaution. Tasha, Nathaniel put his hand on her wrist. I don't think this is the right time. When is the right time? She pulled her hand away. Your father needs to know that his estate is protected, that everything will pass to you, as it should. I slowly put down the fork and knife. I looked at them both. My property is protected, I said calmly. Sonar, and it will go to whomever I decide to leave it to. Tasha tensed like a hound on the prowl. What do you mean? Nathaniel is your only heir. Legally, yes, I nodded. But the will can be changed. It was a bluff. I'd never considered disinheriting Nathaniel, no matter how complicated our relationship was. But I needed to see their reaction. The reaction followed immediately. Tasha's face contorted as if she'd swallowed something sour. Nathaniel turned pale. Dad, are you hiding something from me? His voice trembled. Do you have someone else? I barely held back a chuckle. Someone else? At my age? After all these years of widowhood? No, I shook my head. Just saying I have the right to dispose of my property as I see fit. Tasha quickly changed tactics. Of course you do. She smiled again. We just wanted to make sure the paperwork was in order. You know, there are so many scammers out there now, preying on the property of the elderly. I'm aware of that, I replied dryly. And I can assure you that my papers are in order. Oh, that's great. She clapped her hands together. Then we have nothing to worry about. Nathaniel, isn't it? My son looked like he'd been pulled out of water he'd almost drowned in. Yes, of course. He tried to smile, but it was unconvincing. Dad, we're just worried about you. And appreciate everything you've done, Tasha quickly added. This house, it's gorgeous. How long did it take to build it? 3 years, Henri, I answered, deciding to go along with the change of subject. But it will never be completely finished. A house is like a living thing. It needs constant care. Exactly. Tasha nodded vigorously. And at your age, that must be getting harder and harder? A big house that requires constant attention? And we were back to where we started. I can manage, I said. My hands are still working. Sure, sure, she dismissed it. But still, have you thought about moving somewhere smaller? Like closer to us? There are some great condominiums, especially for people your age. You mean nursing homes? I wasn't being sarcastic. No way, she laughed. They're modern, full-service complexes. They have everything from spas to movie theaters. Sounds like a luxury prison. I crossed my arms across my chest. Thank you, but I prefer my freedom. Tasha opened her mouth to object, but Nathaniel interrupted her abruptly. Dad, no one's forcing you to move. It was just a conversation. I looked at my son more closely. There was something in his eyes. Fear? Worry? Did they really have plans for my house? Of course, I decided to play their game. Just a conversation. The rest of lunch passed in tense silence. Tasha tried several times to return to the subject of real estate, but I avoided direct answers, shifting the conversation to neutral topics. Weather, city news, sports, though neither Nathaniel nor I had ever been particularly interested in them. After lunch, I offered them coffee and we moved into the living room. Tasha immediately began to look around the room, lingering her eyes on every detail. Her eyes were evaluating, figuring, calculating. Shiriyu. What wonderful antiques. She ran her finger over the dresser I'd inherited from my father. Antiques are so valuable now. It's a family heirloom, I said, emphasizing the word family. And now it's going to go to Nathaniel, and from him to our future children. She put her hand on my stomach, as if to suggest it. I nearly choked on my coffee. Are you expecting a baby? Not yet. She smiled like a fox to a henhouse. But we're planning to. Aren't we, darling? Nathaniel seemed to be hearing about these plans for the first time. Hey. Yes, of course. Eventually. The baby needs space, Tasha continued. A big house, a garden, like this. Now I knew exactly what their plan was. They wanted to convince me to give them the house, not after I died, but right now, using my grandson, who didn't exist yet, as bait. Kids are great, I sipped my coffee, but there's no rush. We need to get back on our feet first. Oh, we're firmly on our feet, Tasha straightened up. Nathaniel has a good job, and so do I. But of course, some extra assets never hurt. Assets? I raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about? The future, Mr. Prescott. She leaned forward. About the legacy you'll leave behind. This house, for instance. You built it with your own hands, didn't you? Wouldn't you like to see your grandchildren grow up in it? I stared at her without blinking. She was good, that Tasha. Knew which buttons to push, knew how to use my attachment to the house against me. I'd love to see my grandchildren, I said slowly. But as a guest, this house is my home. But it's too big for one person, she persisted. And it's expensive to maintain. Heating, electricity, repairs. I can manage, I repeated for the umpteenth time. For now, yes, she nodded. But what about 5 years from now? 10 years from now? Tasha, Nathaniel finally intervened. That's enough. Dad made it clear he didn't want to discuss this now. She threw him a disgruntled look, but backed off. Of course, darling. I just wanted to help. Sharonanim. Thank you for your concern. I couldn't hide the irony in my voice. But I don't need help managing my own property. Of course, she smiled again. I'm sorry if I was too forward. I'm just worried about my family, about our future. Our family, our future. It's like I'm already removed from the equation, like I'm already dead and buried, and all that's left to do is divide the inheritance. Speaking of the future, Tasha suddenly changed her tone. You made a will, didn't you, after your wife died? Tasha, Nathaniel looked shocked. What? She shrugged. It's an important question. Your father needs to make sure his wishes are honored. I stared at them, feeling the anger building up inside. They were sitting in my house drinking my coffee and discussing my death as if it were a formality to be settled. My will is in order, I said icily, and I'm not going to discuss its contents. Of course, Tasha backed away quickly. I just wanted to make sure everything was legally correct. There are so many stories about inheritance disputes. In my case, there will be no disputes. I set the cup on the table. It's all very clear. Nathaniel looked like he wanted to fall through the ground. Dad, why don't we talk about something else? I'd love to. I leaned back in my chair. How's your work going? The conversation took a safer turn. Nathaniel talked about his projects, about the promotion he expected to get next quarter. Tasha interjected comments emphasizing what a wonderful husband she had. I nodded, pretending to listen. But all the while, I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. How frankly they'd tried to find out my plans for the house. The greed with which Tasha had looked through every room. They were up to something, and whatever it was, I had to be ready. By the time they finally got ready to leave, it was getting dark. Tasha asked me to show her the bathroom, and I pointed to a door at the end of the hallway. As soon as she was out of sight, I turned to Nathaniel. What's really going on? I asked bluntly. He flinched as if I'd hit him. What do you mean? Don't pretend you don't understand. This questioning about the house, about the will, what are you up to? Nothing, Dad. He wouldn't look me in the eye. Tasha's just worried about the future. Our future. And my death is part of your future? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. What? No. He finally looked at me. How can you say that? How can you think that? I retorted. You came here after months of silence and started probing about my house. What am I supposed to think? Nathaniel opened his mouth to answer, but that's when Tasha returned. She looked as fresh and content as a cat that had found sour cream. We should go, dear. She took him under her arm. Mr. Prescott, thank you for your hospitality. It was so nice to see you again. Likewise, I lied. We exchanged awkward goodbyes and I walked them to the door. Nathaniel turned around at the last moment. Dad, Come on, Nathaniel. Tasha tugged on his arm. It's getting late. And they left. I stood on the doorstep, watching their car disappear into the twilight, and I could feel the anxiety growing inside. Something was wrong here. Something more than just my daughter-in-law's greed and my son's weakness. Closing the door, I went back into the living room and pulled out my phone. I needed to consult with someone I trusted, and I only had one such person. A month had passed since that awkward visit from Nathaniel and Tasha. Life was back to normal. Early risings, coffee on the veranda, small chores, occasional conversations with neighbors, and long evenings with books or TV. But the inner tension wouldn't let go. I couldn't escape the thought that these inquiries about the house and the inheritance were just a prelude to something more. After they left, I called Roger and told him about the strange visit. He listened without interrupting me, and then he said what I already knew, but was afraid to admit. They're up to something, Will, and I don't like it. Roger advised me to check the deeds to the house, make sure they were in order, and keep them in a safe place. So I did. The papers were in the safe, and I now had the key to it with me at all times. Nathaniel hasn't called since. Not once. It was as if that visit had never happened, as if all those questions about the house and the inheritance were just idle curiosity. But I knew my son, or thought I did. He didn't back down so easily. Or rather, Tasha didn't back down. On that cloudy Sunday, I worked in the garden, clearing the flower beds that Elizabeth had once so lovingly arranged. After her death, I continued to tend the flowers. Not as skillfully, of course, but I tried to maintain what she held dear. It was in the garden that I felt her presence most strongly. The ringing of the phone caught me off guard. I wiped my hands on my jeans and went to answer it, thinking it must be Roger. We'd agreed to have dinner together tonight. I'm listening. Dad, it's me. Nathaniel's voice sounded strange, tense. I just wanted to warn you. Warn you about what? I frowned, feeling my insides tighten with foreboding. They're coming to see you, Tasha and her mother. They have some papers. I don't know exactly what's going on, but... What papers? I interrupted him. I don't know, he almost shouted. Something to do with the house. Tasha doesn't tell me everything, you know? She's been different lately. She's been secretive, whispering to her mom on the phone a lot. And you decided to call me just now. I didn't hide my irritation. I just found out. I could hear the desperation in his voice. They thought I'd gone to meet a client, but I forgot my papers and came back. I heard them talking. Dad, be careful. I don't know what they're up to, but it's not good. Where are you now? At home. They left 10 minutes ago. Yeah, I should have told you. There was something like remorse in his voice, but I didn't care right now. Thanks for the warning, I said and hung up. My thoughts were racing frantically. What kind of papers could Tasha and her mother have? And by the way, I'd never met this woman, though I'd heard about her from Nathaniel. Selma Bellinger, right? Real estate agent, widow, manipulative, according to Nathaniel himself. I quickly went to the safe to check the paperwork. Everything was there. Title deeds, insurance, will. But if not that, what? What could they be up to? And then it hit me. I pulled out my cell phone and dialed Roger. Roger, can you come to my place now? It's urgent. It seems I'm going to have some uninvited guests, and I need your legal expertise. What's wrong? His voice immediately became serious. I summarized Nathaniel's call. Damn it, Will. That sounds bad. I'll be at your place in 20 minutes. Don't sign anything, okay? Nothing at all. I'm not going to, I assured him. After calling Roger, I quickly changed, washed the dirt off my hands, and made coffee. If I was going to receive uninvited guests, I should at least look decent. Roger arrived in his old Ford in exactly 18 minutes. I timed it. As punctual as ever, as focused as ever, he looked like a real lawyer, even though he was wearing jeans and a plaid shirt. Tell me everything from the beginning, he demanded as soon as we were seated at the kitchen table. I recounted the conversation with Nathaniel again. And you don't know what those papers are? Roger frowned. I have no idea. All my house papers are in the safe, I checked. Roger tapped his fingers on the table thoughtfully. I don't like this, Will. I don't like it at all. There's something... Wait a minute, he suddenly straightened up. Have you gotten any papers to sign lately? Anything that might have looked harmless? Insurance? Tax forms? Anything? I strained my memory. Nathaniel dropped off some paperwork a couple weeks ago. Something to do with a tax deduction for retirees. Said it could save me money. And you signed it? I could hear the anxiety in Roger's voice. Yeah, but I read it carefully. There was nothing about a transfer of property or anything like that. Did they leave you a copy? I shook my head. Sion. Nathaniel said he'd send it to me later, when he'd finalized everything. And he didn't. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. No, I could feel the anxiety building inside me. Roger, do you think... I think we need to prepare for the worst. He pulled out his cell phone. I'll call a friend of mine on the police force. Jim's on duty right now. If anything goes wrong, he'll be here in 5 minutes. Do you think it'll come to that? Son, I hope not. Roger was already dialing the number. But we'd better be ready. While he was talking to his cop friend, I was trying to remember every detail of the documents I'd signed. Standard form, standard language. I'd read them, but, maybe not as carefully as I should have. Maybe there was something in the legal terminology that I hadn't noticed. Jim's ready to come at a moment's notice, said Roger, ending the conversation. Now we just have to wait for your guests. We didn't have to wait long. Half an hour later, we heard the sound of a car pulling up. I went to the window and saw a shiny black Mercedes, from which 2 women were getting out. I recognized one of them at once. Tasha, in a strict suit and with perfect hair, looked like a business shark. The second was older with the same predatory expression on her face, but a more shabby version of life. Selma Bellinger, no different. They're here, I said to Roger. Remember, don't sign anything or admit anything. He stood beside me. I'll speak as your legal representative. The doorbell rang demandingly, aggressively. I took a deep breath and went to open it. Mr. Prescott. Tasha smiled her fake smile. I hope we're not too early. For what? I didn't invite them in, just stood in the doorway. So you can pack up and vacate the premises. The older woman stepped forward. I'm Selma Bellinger. I own this house now. I almost laughed in her face. What is this nonsense? I crossed my arms over my chest. This house belongs to me. It always has, and it always will. Not anymore. Tasha pulled a file out of her bag. 2 weeks ago, you signed a deed of gift transferring ownership of this house to my mother. Here, it's all legal. Your signature is notarized. She handed me the papers and I took them, feeling a chill inside. At first glance, the documents looked official. Stamps, signatures, everything as it should be. Indeed, there was a signature at the bottom that looked like mine. It's a forgery, I said firmly. I never signed a deed of gift for my house. Oh, really? Selma grinned. That's not what the notary says. We have witnesses who will testify that you were in your right mind when you made that decision. Decision? I could feel my blood boiling. What decision? To free up the house for a young family. Tasha said so sweetly it made me sick. You said yourself that this house was too big for one person, and that you wanted your grandchildren to grow up in it. I never said anything like that. My voice turned icy. Look, Mr. Prescott, Selma stepped forward, her tone hard. We could do this the easy way. Give you time to pack. Maybe even help you find an apartment. But if you want to do it the hard way, I think Mr. Prescott needs legal advice. Roger appeared behind me. Roger Holland, attorney at law. And you must be the ladies who are trying to commit real estate fraud? Tasha's face changed. For a moment, the mask fell away, and I saw anger mixed with consternation. But she quickly pulled herself together. There's no fraud. We have all the documents we need. Forged documents, Roger parried calmly. Mr. Prescott never signed the deed of gift. The one you slipped him 2 weeks ago was a tax form, not a deed. Prove it, Selma snorted contemptuously. We have a notarized signature. You have what? Écran, we have a witness, Roger smiled. Mr. Prescott's son, who informed us of your plans this morning, and the police report I filed an hour ago when I learned of your scam. There was real concern on their faces now. Tasha turned to her mother. Nathaniel couldn't. He didn't know. Shut up, Selma hissed at her. It's a bluff. There are no police here. As if in answer to her words, a siren sounded in the distance. Are you sure? I couldn't help but grin. You seem to have a few minutes to come up with a good explanation. This is ridiculous. Tasha tried to keep her composure, but her voice shook. We have a legal right to this house. Mr. Prescott signed the deed of gift voluntarily. Vacate the house immediately. It belongs to my mother now. I mocked her. That's what I think you were going to say? Tasha took a step back, her face contorted with rage. You don't understand. We did everything by the book. You forged documents and signatures, Roger was adamant. That's a felony, aggravated fraud. Given the value of this property, you're both looking at serious jail time. The siren sounded closer and closer. Selma suddenly grabbed her daughter's hand. Let's go, now. But Mom, we can't just... I said, let's go. Selma pulled Tasha toward the car. This isn't over, Prescott, she threw over her shoulder. We have the papers. The law's on our side. I just laughed at them, knowing they had nothing but fakery and chutzpah. But they didn't get away in time. A police car pulled into my driveway, blocking the path of their Mercedes. A stout man in a uniform got out of it, apparently Roger's friend Jim. Ladies, he nodded to Tasha and Selma. I'm Officer James Montgomery. We have a report of attempted real estate fraud. Would you please come with me to testify? Their faces turned pale at the same time. Tasha looked like she was about to faint, and Selma looked like she was ready to pounce. It's a misunderstanding, Tasha tried to smile. We just came to visit my husband's father with forged documents for his house? Jim raised an eyebrow. Interesting way to visit relatives. It's not a forgery, Selma raised her voice. We did everything legally. Then you have nothing to fear, Jim shrugged. Let's find out at the station. Your papers, please. Tasha reluctantly held out a folder of papers. Jim took a quick look at them, then nodded toward his car. Please, ladies, you have no right to detain us. Selma was indignant. We have a legal... I'm not detaining you, Jim interrupted her. For the present, I'm asking you to come down to the station to make inquiries. But if you refuse to cooperate, that could change. Tasha grabbed her mother's hand. Mom, please, let's just go with him. We'll explain everything. Selma looked like she was ready to explode with rage, but after a pause, she nodded reluctantly. All right, but I'll only speak in the presence of my attorney. You're right, Jim opened the back door of the police car. Here you go. They got into the car, giving Roger and me murderous looks. Jim walked over to us. Roger, Mr. Prescott, he shook our hands. I've been going over these documents. It looks official at first glance, but if you say you didn't sign the deed of gift... I didn't, I said firmly. What I signed was a tax form. At least that's what they told me. It's a classic scheme, Jim nodded. Slip one document and then use the signature for another. We'll need to take a formal statement from you and maybe samples of your signature for examination. Sure, whatever you need. I'll go with them now to make sure they don't pull any more stunts, Jim said. And you come down to the station in a couple of hours when I've sorted out the formalities. Thanks, Jim. Roger shook his hand. I knew I could count on you. Always for an old friend. He smiled and walked back to the car. We watched the police car with Tasha and Selma in the back seat pull out of my driveway. I felt a strange mixture of relief and bitterness. What now? I asked Roger when the car was out of sight. Now we have to prove that you didn't sign that deed of gift. He patted my shoulder. Don't worry, with handwriting expertise, it won't be difficult. The main thing is that we were able to intercept them before they tried to physically force you out of the house. I nodded, still not believing it had actually happened. Roger, do you think Nathaniel knew about this? My friend looked at me sympathetically. He called you today. That means all is not lost. But maybe he was aware of it from the beginning. I shook my head. Maybe he was in on the scam until he realized they'd gone too far. We won't know that until we talk to him, Roger sighed. But right now, let's focus on protecting your home and bringing these two predators to justice. I nodded in agreement, feeling grateful to have a friend like Roger around. If it hadn't been for his quick response, I might have been in a much more difficult situation. Thank you, I squeezed his shoulder. For everything. You're welcome, he smiled. That's what friends are for, right? To get each other out of trouble. I nodded, feeling the tension of the last hour begin to let go. The house was still mine. Tasha and her mother's plan had failed, but I knew that wasn't the end of the story. There were police reports ahead, possibly a trial, and the inevitable conversation with Nathaniel. Well, Roger clapped his hands together, we've got a couple hours before the trip to the station. How about a cup of coffee or something stronger? I think we have a reason to drink tonight. I smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like everything was going to be okay. Whatever happened next, I was ready for it, and I wasn't alone. Definitely something stronger, I nodded, heading for the kitchen. We deserved it tonight. The week after the incident with Tasha and her mother had been a blur. The police station, depositions, handwriting samples, endless paperwork and formalities. Jim, Roger's friend, was a true professional, meticulous, attentive to detail, yet humanly understanding of the situation. He wrote down everything I could remember about the tax forms I was signing and promised to personally supervise the investigation. Mr. Prescott, he said, shaking my hand, we often come across cases like this. Elderly people living alone are targeted by fraudsters, but usually it's not relatives. I guess I was lucky. I couldn't hide the bitterness in my voice. We'll figure it out, Jim assured me. Handwriting analysis, questioning the notary who supposedly certified the documents. It'll take time, but the truth will come out. In the meantime, be careful. Don't sign anything without consulting an attorney. I nodded, though it was an unnecessary warning. After what had happened, I wouldn't even put my signature on a greeting card without careful scrutiny. Roger insisted on moving in with me temporarily. Just for a few days, Will, he said, tossing a gym bag into the guest bedroom. Until we're sure those two won't come back with new IDs or worse. I didn't bother to object. The house seemed too empty and vulnerable after recent events, and the company of an old friend was just right. Nathaniel hadn't called. After that warning, the day Tasha and Selma arrived, complete silence. I didn't know if he was an accomplice or just a victim, and that uncertainty gnawed at my insides more than I wanted to admit. On the fourth day, the doorbell rang. I opened it and saw Nathaniel on the doorstep. He looked exhausted, the dark circles under his eyes, the wrinkled shirt, the faded look in his eyes. Dad? He nodded at me, not trying to hug or shake my hand. Can I come in? I stepped back silently, letting him into the house. Roger, hearing the stranger's voice, came out of the kitchen. When he saw Nathaniel, he tensed. Should I leave you two alone? He asked, looking at me. I shook my head. Stay. Whatever Nathaniel has to say, you can hear. My son shuffled awkwardly from foot to foot in the hallway, as if hesitant to go any further. I've come to explain myself, he said at last. What exactly do you want to explain? My voice sounded colder than I intended. How you let your wife try to steal my house? Or how you slipped me fake documents to sign? Nathaniel flinched as if struck by a blow. I didn't know. His voice was barely audible. I swear I didn't know it was a deed of gift. Tasha said it was a tax break for retirees, and I believed her. I would never... You would never what? I crossed my arms over my chest. Wouldn't cheat on your father? But you did. You brought those papers. You asked me to sign them. But I really thought they were tax forms. He gave me a desperate look. Tasha said she wanted to help you save money, and I just believed her. Did you even read what I was signing? Nathaniel lowered his eyes. No. Tasha said she'd already checked it out, and I just trusted her. I shook my head, feeling the frustration building inside. My son, a grown man in his 40s, letting his wife manipulate him like a puppet. And when did you realize what was really going on? Roger asked. Nathaniel shifted his gaze to him. The morning they drove here. I forgot the paperwork for a client and came home. Heard Tasha talking to her mother on the phone. She said something like, "The old man will be out of the house today and we can finally sell it." I couldn't believe my ears and started questioning her. At first she was all defensive, saying I'd misunderstood, but then she just laughed and said I was too soft to understand how real business was done. He spoke faster and faster, as if in a hurry to get out what had been tormenting him all this time. She said you're an old man who's going to die soon anyway, and the house is too valuable to be idle. That her mother had wanted a house like this for a long time, in a neighborhood like this. That the deeds were ready and it would be legal. I tried to stop her, but she just walked away, along with her mother. That's when I called you. I watched my son carefully, trying to see if he was telling the truth. Could Nathaniel be that blind? That naive? Or was this just an attempt to justify himself after the plan failed? And you expect me to believe that? I asked. It's true, Dad. Nathaniel looked up at me, his eyes full of pain. I would never have done it consciously. Never. But you didn't mind much when Tasha asked me about the house during your visit, I reminded him. You didn't say anything when she suggested I move into a nursing home? Yeah. I thought she was just worried about you. He ran a hand through his hair. I thought she wanted you to be comfortable, to be taken care of. Karinawakano. Did you ever wonder why she was suddenly so concerned about my well-being? I wasn't being sarcastic. After all these years of obvious dislike, Nathaniel lowered his head. I was an idiot, he whispered. Such a damn idiot. There was a long pause. Roger retreated delicately to the kitchen, giving us the illusion of privacy but staying within earshot. Where do you live now? I finally asked. At a friend's house, Nathaniel grinned bitterly. After that call, I packed my things and left the house. Tasha called me when she was released from the police station, yelling that I'd ruined everything, that I was a traitor, promised I'd regret it. And her mother? Selma? He shrugged. I don't know. They're both under investigation now, from what I understand. Tasha said something about bail. Yes, they're out on bail, Roger confirmed. But it's a serious case. Forgery, real estate fraud. It's no joke. Nathaniel nodded, looking down at the floor. I know, and I agreed to testify against them, to tell everything I know about how they planned it. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. Against your own wife? Ex-wife, he looked up. I filed for divorce. After all this, I just can't. I can't stay with a man who would do something like that. I watched my son carefully, trying to see if his remorse was genuine. Part of me wanted to believe him, to believe that he really didn't know about Tasha's plans until the last moment. But the other part, the part that remembered his acquiescence to all her antics for so many years, doubted. What are you going to do next? I asked. Nathaniel shrugged. I don't know. I'll stay at a friend's house for a while, and then maybe I'll get an apartment. I've been offered a transfer to another office in Boston. Maybe it's a chance for a fresh start. Boston, the other side of the country. I felt strangely relieved that he'd be so far away. Maybe we both needed it. Distance, time to think, to reevaluate. Maybe it's a good idea, I said neutrally. Nathaniel looked at me carefully, as if searching for some sign, some hope of forgiveness. But I couldn't give it to him. Not now, maybe never. I realize you can't forgive me, he said quietly. I can't forgive myself. But I wanted you to know the truth, to let you know that I was not a conscious participant in this crime. I nodded, not trusting my voice. What could I possibly say? It's okay, son? That would be a lie. Everything was far from okay. I should probably go. Nathaniel shifted awkwardly from foot to foot. I just wanted you to know, E. I'll testify if I have to, so they can't hurt you anymore. I nodded again. He took a step toward the door but stopped suddenly and turned around. You know, Mom always said you were the most stubborn person in the world. His voice trembled. But she also said that it was that stubbornness that helped you build this house, raise our family, create everything we had. She said that I should take an example from you in that. And instead of doing that, instead I let a stranger almost destroy what you built. I felt something tighten in my chest at the mention of Elizabeth. God, how would she react to all of this? What would she say? Ellie always saw the best in people, I said quietly, even when the best wasn't there. She wasn't wrong about you, Nathaniel smiled weakly. But in me, he didn't finish his sentence, just turned and walked out. I stood in the doorway, watching him walk to his car. Not the expensive silver sedan I'd seen last time, but an older Ford that looked like Roger's. Apparently, the silver sedan was left for Tasha. When he drove away, Roger came over and put his hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? I don't know, I answered honestly. I'm not sure I'll ever be okay after all this. Do you think he was telling the truth? Roger asked cautiously. About not knowing about his wife's plans? I shook my head slowly. I don't. Part of me wants to believe him. But the other part remembers how he always obeyed her, how he let her make all the decisions, dictate the terms. Even if he didn't know about the gift, he created the conditions in which it could happen. Roger nodded understandingly. What are you going to do? What I have to do, I went into the living room and sat down in my chair. Protect myself and my home. The first thing to do is change the will. Disinherit him? Roger sat down across from me. I've been thinking. Despite everything that had happened, cutting Nathaniel out of the will completely seemed too drastic a step. No, not completely. But I'll set up a trust so the house can't be sold after I die, and I'll appoint an independent trustee so that Nathaniel can't have sole control of the property. That makes sense, Roger nodded. I can help with the paperwork. I have contacts at several law firms that specialize in such matters. Thank you, I nodded gratefully. One more thing. I want part of the proceeds from the sale of the house, if it comes to that, to go to charity. Something to do with protecting the elderly from financial fraud. I think Elizabeth would approve of that. Roger smiled. No doubt she would. She was always in favor of helping others. We sat in silence for a while. I looked at the family picture on the wall. Me, Elizabeth, and little Nathaniel, smiling a scratchy baby smile. When did it all go wrong? When did my son and I become such strangers to each other that he let his wife plan such a thing? You know, I said finally, I always thought I knew Tasha. I saw right through her from day one. I saw her greed, her calculating nature. But I never imagined she'd go this far. People often surprise you, Roger said philosophically, and rarely for the better. Yeah, I grinned bitterly. I wonder how long she'd been planning this? From the very beginning? From the moment she met Nathaniel? Who knows, Roger shrugged. Maybe at first she just wanted a husband, stability. And then, when she found out about the house, about its value, greed took over. And Nathaniel had been just a tool for her all this time. A tool? The thought was strangely painful. As complicated as my relationship with my son was, I didn't want him to be used. It seems that way, Roger sighed. And from the looks of it, she was masterful at manipulating him. Made him feel like he wasn't good enough, not strong enough, and then rewarded him every time he did what she wanted him to do. I remembered the way Tasha had looked at Nathaniel during their visit, condescending, like a child. and how he'd sought her approval with every word, every gesture. Poor fool, I muttered. Caught in a trap and didn't even notice. A trap of his own making, Roger said. His indecision, his eagerness to please, that's the kind of person who attracts manipulators. I sighed, realizing that there was truth in what my friend had said. Nathaniel had always been like that. Too soft, too compliant. I'd tried to build character in him, to teach him to stand up for himself, but I guess I'd failed. Well, I got up from my chair. That's enough of that. Let's get down to business. I need to get in touch with a lawyer, change my will, maybe rearrange some property. I want to make sure something like this never happens again. Roger's up too. Good call. I'll call my contact at Greenberg and Associates and make an appointment for tomorrow. Thank you, I nodded gratefully, for everything. You're welcome, he smiled. By the way, Jim called while you were in the shower. Said the notary who supposedly certified the deed of gift claims, he's never seen you or certified any documents involving you. Looks like his signature was forged too. Well, another piece of evidence in our favor. I was relieved. Yeah, the case against them is getting stronger. I don't think they'll get off scot-free. I nodded, feeling a strange satisfaction. Not joy, no. It couldn't be joy that my son had been caught up in such a story, that my family had been effectively broken up. But there was satisfaction that justice would prevail, that those who had tried to steal my home, my life, would receive the punishment they deserved. And in the meantime, I still had my home, my memories, my own decisions. And that was probably enough. I always loved springtime in Martinsburg. The way the town gradually wakes up from its winter hibernation. First the crocuses appear, breaking through the melted snow, then the cherry and apple trees blossom, and finally everything fills with fresh green. Elizabeth adored this time of year. Spring is a new beginning, Willis, she would say as she pruned the rose bushes in the garden. A chance to start over. 6 months had passed since that story with Tasha and Selma. 6 months in which much had changed. Winter had changed into spring, and I'd changed too, even if not as noticeably as the nature outside my window. That morning I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching Rusty, my new dog, run around the yard chasing his own shadow. The 7-month-old golden Labrador had come into my life 3 months ago. I'd found him at the shelter when I'd gone there to fix a leaky roof as a volunteer. Our gazes met and something clicked. That same day, I brought him home. Roger, seeing the dog, just shook his head. Will, you always said you didn't like dogs. I've said a lot of things, I said, watching the puppy settle into the house. People change. And it was true. I had changed. After the gift-giving incident, after Nathaniel's betrayal, conscious or not, it didn't matter. Something in me had broken and reassembled itself differently, like a broken bone that grows stronger as it heals. I was finishing my coffee when my phone beeped with a new message. It was Roger. Check your mail. Court papers came in. I set my cup down and went to the mailbox. Indeed, among the bills and advertising pamphlets lay an official envelope stamped with the county court seal. When I opened it, I saw a notice of a hearing date for a real estate fraud case. I was scheduled to testify against Tasha and Selma in a month. The trial had moved slowly, with many continuances and legal tricks used by the defendant's attorneys, but now it looked like the case was finally moving forward. I called Roger. Got the papers, I said when he answered. The hearing's in a month. I know. I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Jim called me last night, said the DA's office had finally gotten everything they needed. The handwriting expert confirmed the forgery. The notary's ready to testify. It's looking like they're going to get real sentences. So to Hermione. Good. I felt more relief than joy. The sooner this was over, the better. By the way, have you heard any news about Nathaniel? Roger asked cautiously. No, I frowned. Did something happen? Their divorce went into effect last week. Jim found out from his buddy at the courthouse. Nathaniel got almost nothing. No house, no car. Tasha somehow proved that it was all purchased with her money. I didn't know how to feel about it. On the one hand, Nathaniel had chosen this woman, had let her take over. On the other hand, he was still my son, and the thought of leaving him with nothing resonated deep inside. Had he tried to contact you? Roger asked. No. I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. No phone calls, no letters. Nothing since that visit. Maybe I should call him myself, Roger suggested it. After all, he is your son. No, I said firmly. If he wants to talk, he knows where to find me. Roger sighed on the other end of the line. Stubborn old man, he muttered. Okay, I won't push it. I'll see you tonight. Carol and I were thinking of inviting you over for a barbecue. The weather is supposed to be great. I'd love to, I said. Can I bring anything? Just myself and my famous appetite. Roger laughed. Carol makes her signature ribs. We agreed on a time and ended the conversation. I returned to the veranda, where Rusty was waiting for me, tail wagging. What's up, buddy? Tired of running? I scratched him behind the ears. Come on inside, it's time for me to do some chores. In the last few months, I've been doing some serious renovations to the house. Not because it needed it, but because I needed something to keep my hands and head busy. I replaced the roof, which had begun to leak in several places, refloored the kitchen and hallway, and began work on a new workshop in the garage. The work was calming, giving me a sense of purpose and control, something I had sorely lacked in the first weeks after the incident with Tasha. That afternoon, I planned to finish sanding the new kitchen cabinets. The old ones had served faithfully for almost 30 years, but the wood was starting to dry out, and I decided it was time for an upgrade. I was just finishing the last door when the doorbell rang. Wiping my hands on a rag, I went to open it, wondering who it could be. Neighbors rarely dropped by unannounced, and I wasn't expecting guests. Nathaniel stood on the doorstep. He looked better than the last time I'd seen him, not so haggard, but still thin and pale. He was wearing simple jeans and a plaid shirt, so different from his usual outfits. Hi, Dad, he smiled uncertainly. Can I come in? I stared at him, not knowing what to say. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut. Another part of me wanted to hug this man who, despite everything, was my son. Why? I finally asked. Nathaniel didn't seem surprised by this welcome. I just wanted to talk, to tell him I had a new job. I divorced Tasha. I know. I stepped back, letting him into the house, Roger said. He walked in, looking around like he hadn't been here in years, not months. Have you done the renovations? I've started, I shrugged. It was about time. Rusty came running from the kitchen, tail wagging happily at the sight of the new man. You have a dog? Nathaniel looked surprised. You never liked dogs. People change, I repeated the phrase I told Roger. Let's go to the kitchen and I'll make some coffee. We sat at the kitchen table like two strangers at a train station, forcedly polite, uncertain, wary. Nathaniel was twirling his cup in his hands, avoiding looking me in the eye. I'm moving, he said finally, to Boston. I got that job I told you about last time. Congratulations, I nodded, trying to keep my voice neutral. Thanks, he was still staring into his cup. It's a good paycheck, and a fresh start. You need it, I agreed. After everything that had happened. Nathaniel finally looked up. Dad, I want to apologize. Again. For everything that happened. For being such a blind fool. For letting her manipulate me all these years. I stared at him, trying to figure out how I felt. Anger. Yeah, it was still smoldering inside. Disappointment? Absolutely. But there was also sadness. A deep, overwhelming sadness at the thought of my only son being so weak, so vulnerable to manipulation. She used you, I said at last. From the beginning, you were just a tool. Nathaniel grinned bitterly. I know now. All these years, she made me feel inferior. Told me I was too soft, too indecisive, that I'm worthless without her. And I believed her. Why? I couldn't hide the bewilderment in my voice. Why did you let her treat you like that? He hesitated, as if he were asking himself that question for the first time. I guess because she was like you, he said at last. Just as strong, determined, self-assured. I always felt I didn't live up to your expectations, that I wasn't man enough. Man enough for you. And Tasha filled that void. She made choices for me, made decisions, took responsibility. And I like that. For a while, I was silent, digesting what I'd heard. Had I really made him feel inferior all these years? Was my disappointment in his choice of profession, in his lifestyle, really that obvious? Honam, I never wanted you to feel like you weren't good enough, I finally said. Yes, I wanted you to follow in my footsteps, to work with your hands, to create something real, but that doesn't mean you disappointed me by choosing a different path. Really? Nathaniel looked me straight in the eye. Because that's how I've always felt. Not good enough, not strong enough, not like you. We sat in silence for a while, each of us immersed in our own thoughts. Outside the window, the wind rustled the young leaves. Rusty snoozed in his corner, and there was a strange, peaceful harmony in those mundane sounds that contrasted with the tension of our conversation. You know, I finally said, maybe we both made mistakes. I shouldn't have pushed you so hard. And you shouldn't have let someone else decide for you. Nathaniel nodded. That's what I've been thinking about these past months. About how I let others, first you, then Tasha, determine my worth. And now I want to find myself. Figure out who I am without all of this. Is that why Boston? Yes, he smiled weakly. New city, new job, new people. A chance to start fresh. I nodded, understanding his eagerness. Maybe that was really what he needed. Space, distance, time for self-discovery. Did you hear there's going to be a trial? I asked. Yes, his face darkened. I'm being called to testify too, just before I leave for Boston. Are you ready for that? I looked at him carefully. Testify against Tasha in court? I can't say I'm looking forward to it. He grinned bitterly. But yes, I am ready. It's the right thing to do. What they did, what they planned to do. It's a crime. And not just against me, I said. Nathaniel raised his eyebrows in surprise. What do you mean? You haven't heard. I thought Roger or someone else had already told him. When they started investigating, it turned out that Tasha and her mother had tried to pull similar scams on other elderly people. Using their real estate connections and access to documents, they had already defrauded two elderly people by getting them to sign deeds of gift for their homes. One victim is a 90-year-old woman who now lives in a nursing home without realizing what happened. The other is a 75-year-old man who they convinced he was signing a contract for renovation work, when in fact it was a deed of gift on his house in favor of some frontman. Nathaniel turned pale. God, I didn't know. I thought it was an isolated incident, that they did it because of the value of your house, because of its location. No, I shook my head. It looked like they had a whole scheme. They picked out elderly people who lived alone, in houses with high market value, and found a way to take over the properties. Tasha used her job at the beauty parlor to gather information on potential victims. Wealthy older ladies who liked to chat were often there. And Selma, as a real estate agent, had access to home valuations and knew which houses were the most valuable. Nathaniel looked like he was going to throw up. And I was living with this man? I was married to a woman capable of such a thing? You didn't know. I was surprised to find myself defending him. She hid it well. But I should have seen the signs. He slammed his fist on the table, making the cups bounce. All those strange phone calls, the sudden meetings with my mother, the constant talk about real estate. God, I was so blind. Rusty, startled by the loud sound, ran up to me and nuzzled against my leg. I stroked him, reassuring him. You saw what you wanted to see, I said quietly. We all do that. We turn a blind eye to inconvenient facts, to troubling signs, because the truth is sometimes too painful. Nathaniel looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time. When did you become so wise, Dad? I've always been wise. I smiled slightly. You just didn't listen. He laughed briefly, almost against his will, but sincerely. And I suddenly realized that I hadn't heard him laugh in a long time. Years, perhaps. So Tasha and Selma are facing serious jail time? He asked when the laughter died down. Yes, I nodded. Given the scale of their activities and the age of the victims, the prosecutor is talking about the possibility of real prison terms. Maybe even 10 years. Sword. Good. Nathaniel nodded, and there was a firmness in his voice that I hadn't noticed before. They deserve it, especially for what they did to that old woman. God, 90 years old and without a home. There's hope that she'll get the property back when the court declares the gift null and void, I said. But the process could take a long time. We were silent again, thinking about it. Then Nathaniel looked up. Dad, I know I can't expect you to forgive me after everything that's happened, but I wish I could. I'd like to keep in touch. Call you once in a while. Maybe come down for the holidays, if you'd let me. I stared at him for a long moment, trying to sort out my feelings. Nathaniel was my son, the only family I had left. And yes, he'd made a huge mistake, perhaps even an unforgivable one. But didn't I make mistakes myself? Didn't I contribute to our screwed up relationship all those years ago? I don't know, Nat, I answered honestly. I need time. We both need time. Maybe this distance, Boston, is what we both need. Space to think, to reevaluate, to start over. He nodded, not looking too disappointed, as if he'd expected just such an answer. I understand, and I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. Just know that I'm sorry about everything, and I'd like to make it up to you, if that's even possible. Time will tell, I said, getting up from the table. In the meantime, I have work to finish, and Rusty needs a walk. Nathaniel stood up too, realizing that the conversation was over. Of course, I've already taken up a lot of your time. We walked toward the exit, Rusty trailing behind us, still wary and a little scared. Nathaniel stopped at the door. You know this house, it looks better than ever. You did a great job. Thank you, I nodded, accepting the compliment. There's still a lot to do, but I'm in no hurry. If I need help, he hesitated. I know I'm not very good at repair work, but I could try. Before we leave for Boston, I looked at him, remembering the little boy who used to follow me around when I was fixing something around the house. Always willing to help, always asking questions, always trying to please. Somewhere along the way, we lost that simple, pure father-son bond. Maybe, I finally said. Let me know when you're free. His face brightened. Not quite a smile, but something very close to it. I'll call, he nodded. I promise. I watched him walk to his car, the same old Ford. When he drove away, I walked back into the house, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Not forgiveness, no, not yet, but maybe the first step toward understanding. Rusty was poking his nose into my palm, reminding me of the promised walk. I stroked his head. Come on, buddy. We both need some fresh air. We stepped out into the yard, and I inhaled deeply the scent of spring. Elizabeth was right. Spring really is a time for new beginnings, and maybe not just for nature. Marilyn's hand lay in mine, warm and soft as we walked along the lake in the morning park. Rusty ran ahead, occasionally glancing back to make sure we were still following. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined walking with a woman like this, holding hands like a teenager. That anything like this could happen at my 66th birthday. What's on your mind, Willis? Marilyn looked at me with her bright blue eyes, which even the wrinkles in the corners couldn't make less expressive. About how much can change in a year, I answered honestly. She smiled understandingly. For the better, I hope. Definitely. I squeezed her hand a little tighter. We met 6 months ago at a woodworking class at the local community center. I'd gone there after much persuasion from Roger, who insisted I needed to get out into the world. The class was taught by former cabinet maker Harry Thompson, my age, who after retirement decided to share his skills with anyone who wanted to learn. I, with my background in construction, found the basic classes too easy, but I came anyway, first out of respect for Harry, whom I knew from work, and then because of Marilyn. She was in the first class, a 63-year-old widow with silver hair in a neat bundle and the determined look of someone ready to learn a new skill at any cost. When Harry asked us to introduce ourselves and why we were here, Marilyn bluntly stated, I've let men fix things in my house all my life. First my father, then my husband, then my son. Now I want to learn to do it myself. I was hooked by her candor and determination, and her eyes. Her eyes reminded me of the sky on a summer day, so clear and deep. For the first few weeks, we just exchanged greetings and sometimes brief conversations about projects. Then we started to help each other. She would ask for advice on how to properly sand a piece. I would ask for her opinion on a design. One day after class, I offered her a coffee and she accepted with such naturalness, as if she had been waiting for this invitation. From then on, we spent more and more time together. First, it was going to a coffee shop after class, then Saturday walks in the park, and then I invited her to dinner at my house. I was as nervous as a teenager cooking my signature steak, but Marilyn seemed at ease. She admired the house, especially the details I had made with my own hands, and Rusty immediately fell in love with it, snuggling at her feet as soon as she sat down. "It's so nice to see someone appreciating your work," she said, running her fingers over the carved patterns on the mantelpiece. "Elizabeth always said I spent too much time on details that no one would notice." I smiled, remembering my wife. "She was wrong," Marilyn shook her head. "It's the details that make a house special." At that moment, I realized that for the first time in a long time, I could talk about Elizabeth without a sharp pain in my chest. Her image still lived in my heart, but now it was a bright memory, not a bleeding wound. Now, walking beside Marilyn in the park, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Life went on. In fact, it was blooming with new colors. "Are you still worried about the phone call today?" Marilyn asked, as if reading my mind. I sighed. Nathaniel had called last night, saying he was coming to Martinsburg for the weekend and wanted to get together. Since his move to Boston a year ago, we'd kept in touch. Occasional phone calls, a few emails. A couple times he'd visit and we'd meet on neutral ground, at a coffee shop or park. Conversations were polite but superficial. I couldn't bring myself to fully open up to him again, couldn't risk the fragile peace I'd worked so hard to build. "A little," I admitted. "Nathaniel, he's trying, I can tell, but every time we meet, it's like I'm waiting for a catch, and I hate myself for it." Marilyn squeezed my hand. "It's natural, Willis. After what happened, trust isn't rebuilt in a day." "And not in a year, apparently," I grinned bitterly. "Some wounds take longer to heal than others." She stopped and turned to me. "But the important thing is that you're both trying. You could have cut him out of your life completely, but you didn't. He could have stopped calling after the first few awkward conversations, but he continues. That means something." I looked into her wise eyes and thought about how lucky I was to have her in my life right now. "You're right," I nodded. "As always. I'm a woman, Willis." She patted my chest playfully. "We're always right. It's time you learned that." I laughed, feeling the tension leave me. Marilyn had an amazing gift. She could diffuse the most difficult situation with a single phrase. We continued our walk, discussing more pleasant topics. Marilyn's new project in woodworking class. She was making a dollhouse for her. Granddaughter and my plans for updating the garden plot. Rusty would occasionally run up to us, as if checking to see if everything was okay, and then scurry off again, exploring the grounds. By the time we got back to my house, it was almost lunchtime. Marilyn didn't stay. She had plans to see her daughter, but she promised to stop by tomorrow. "And don't fill your head with gloomy thought," she said, kissing me goodbye. "Everything will be all right." After she left, I went about my normal household chores, trying not to think about my upcoming meeting with Nathaniel. Around 3 in the afternoon, the phone rang. It was Roger. "Will, did you hear the news?" His voice sounded worried. "What news?" "Selma Bellinger has been sentenced to 8 years in prison. They've just announced the verdict." I sank into the chair, feeling a strange relief flood through my body. The trial of Tasha and her mother had lasted almost a year, with many postponements and legal delays. The defendants' attorneys had used every opportunity to delay the trial, but it seemed justice had finally been served. "And Tasha?" I asked, remembering that she had been tried separately. 6 years, Roger answered, and full restitution to all the victims. "That means that old woman, Mrs. Grant, will get her house back." "Good," I sighed. "Very good." "Do you feel relieved?" Roger asked. "Yes," I admitted, though it's strange to say that about a situation where 2 women are going to jail. "But yes, I feel that justice has been served." "They deserved it," I could hear the hardness in Roger's voice. "What they did, it was heartless, using the trust of the elderly, making them homeless. They got what they deserved." We talked some more, and I promised to stop by next week for a game of chess, another new hobby I'd acquired over the past year. After the call, I sat in my favorite chair, pondering the news. Tasha and Selma are in jail. Justice had been served, but in a strange way, it didn't bring me the joy I expected. Instead, I felt something like a final point in a long story. The chapter was closed. It was possible to move on. I thought about how my life had changed over the year. After that gift story, something in me had switched. It was as if all these years I had been living in a half-sleep, letting the days blend into a monotonous succession, and now I was suddenly awake, started to notice the world around me, the people, the possibilities. The woodworking class was just the beginning. I began volunteering at the local animal shelter, at first just helping with repairs. Then I started walking dogs regularly. Through Roger, I met a group of retirees who met once a week to play chess and discuss books. Marilyn introduced me to her friends, and now we had a whole group of people with whom we sometimes went to concerts in the park or barbecues. The house had changed too. I completed a kitchen remodel, completely renovated the bathroom, and built a new patio in the backyard. Each project was an act of love for the house that meant so much to me, but now it was no longer an obsessive defense of the last stronghold of memory of the past, but a joyful creation of space for new life. The ringing of the doorbell interrupted my musings. I glanced at my watch. It was only 4 in the afternoon. Nathaniel was supposed to be here by 6. Maybe he'd decided to come early. When I opened the door, I saw not my son, but a delivery man with a bouquet of flowers. "Mr. Prescott?" he asked, checking the paperwork. "Yes, that's me. Delivery for you." He handed me the bouquet and a clipboard to sign. "Sign here, please." I signed and closed the door, looking at the bouquet. Who could have sent me flowers? Opening the attached card, I smiled. "Good luck with your appointment today. Remember, you can always count on me. Yours, for Marilyn." Of course she did. Only she could have come up with such a gesture of support. I put the flowers in a vase on the kitchen table and went back to my business, feeling a little more confident about my upcoming meeting with Nathaniel. At 6 o'clock that evening, exactly at the appointed time, the doorbell rang. Nathaniel, like me, was always punctual. He stood on the doorstep with a small bag in his hands and an uncertain smile on his face. He'd changed over the year. He looked healthier, more confident. His hair was longer than usual, and there was a slight stubble on his chin. He seemed to be doing well in Boston. "Hey, Dad," he handed me a package. "It's for you. I hope you still like caramel pecans." I accepted the gift, a box of chocolates from a famous Boston candy store. "Oh, thank you." "Yes, I do. Come on in." He came in, and Rusty immediately rushed over to him, tail wagging. They had become friends during Nathaniel's infrequent visits over the year. "Hi, buddy." Nathaniel leaned down to scratch the dog behind his ears. "Did you miss me?" We walked into the living room, and I noticed Nathaniel looking around, noting the changes in the interior. "Did you rearrange?" he asked, pointing to the new arrangement of furniture. "Yeah, I thought I'd update the space a little," I shrugged. "Coffee? I'd love some." He nodded. While I made coffee in the kitchen, Nathaniel stayed in the living room, looking at the pictures on the walls. New ones had been added to the old pictures of our family: me and Rusty in the park, me with a group of volunteers from the shelter, me and Marilyn at a festival downtown. "Beautiful flowers," Nathaniel remarked when I returned with coffee. "Did you have company?" "No," I set the cups on the table. "These are from Marilyn." "Marilyn?" He raised his eyebrows questioningly. I hesitated, not knowing what to call our relationship. "My friend." Nathaniel's face showed surprise, then joy. "You're seeing someone?" "Dad, that's great. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I sat back in my chair, feeling slightly embarrassed. "I don't know. I guess I wasn't sure if it was serious, that it would last." "And how long have you two been together?" "About 6 months," I sipped my coffee. "We met at a woodworking class." "Woodworking?" Now Nathaniel looked really surprised. "You take a class?" "Yeah, at the community center. Actually, I even helped teach some of the techniques there. I'm experienced in it." "Wow," Nathaniel shook his head. "You've completely changed your life, haven't you?" "You could say that," I nodded. "How are things going in Boston? Are you still enjoying your new job?" "Yeah, it's great," he perked up. "In fact, I was recently promoted. I'm managing a small team now." "Congratulations," I smiled genuinely. "That's great." "Thank you," he looked pleased. "I like this new responsibility. And you know what's weird? For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm doing something on my own. Not because someone expects me to, but because I want to." I nodded understandingly. After his divorce from Tasha, Nathaniel seemed to have really started to find himself, discovering his own desires and aspirations, rather than living up to other people's expectations. That's important, I said. Finding your own way. Yes. He took a sip of coffee. By the way, have you heard the news about Tasha and her mother? Yes, Roger called today. 8 and 6 years old. Nathaniel nodded. They deserved it. After everything they've done, I still can't believe I was married to a woman like that I didn't see her true colors. We see what we want to see. I repeated a phrase I told him a year ago, especially when it comes to the people closest to us. I guess, he sighed. Either way, I'm glad it's all behind us. That they can't hurt anyone else. We sat in silence for a while, each of us absorbed in our own thoughts. Then Nathaniel suddenly said, I met someone. In Boston. You did? I looked at him carefully. And who is she? Her name is Helen. A soft smile appeared on his face. She's an architect. We met at a company charity event. She's nothing like Tasha. She's kind, open, honest. Sounds good, I nodded. You look happy when you talk about her. Yeah, I am happy, he admitted, for the first time in a long time. And you know what the weirdest thing is? I'm not afraid of that happiness. I used to always think I didn't deserve it, that it wasn't real or temporary. And now I just accept it. I looked at my son and saw a change in him. Not just externally, but internally as well. He became more confident, calmer, more whole. I'm happy for you, Nat, I said, and the words were sincere. Thanks, Dad, he smiled. I wish you could have met him. Maybe next time I'll bring her along, if that's okay with you. I thought about it for a moment. It would be the next step in our relationship, getting to know new people in each other's lives. A step toward a deeper connection, toward more trust. Of course, I nodded. I'd be happy to meet her. Great, his face brightened. And I'd love to meet Marilyn. She sounds like a wonderful woman. She is. I couldn't hold back a smile. Maybe we could have dinner, all of us together. That would be great. Nathaniel seemed genuinely excited about the idea. We continued talking about his work, about my new projects, about city news. The conversation flowed more easily than usual, without the awkward pauses and tension that had accompanied our previous meetings. Something had changed. Maybe the news of Tasha and Selma's sentencing had put an end to the story. Or maybe we were both just moving forward, each in our own way. It was already dark when Nathaniel left. He hugged me, the first real physical contact between us in a long time. I returned the hug, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Thanks, Dad, he said quietly, for everything. Take care of yourself, Nat. I patted him on the back. And say hello to Helen. When his car was around the corner, I went back to the house, where Rusty was waiting for me at the door. I petted him and went into the kitchen to pour myself a glass of wine. It had been a busy day, and I felt the need to reflect on what had happened. Sitting in my chair with a glass in my hand, I stared at the wall of photographs, a picture of Elizabeth smiling in our garden, to a picture of little Nathaniel with the bicycle I had put together for him, to a recent shot of Marilyn and me laughing in front of a fall park. Life is a strange thing. Sometimes you have to lose what you thought was most important in order to find something new. Sometimes you have to let go of the past to make room for the future. A year ago, I was a lonely old man clinging to my house as the last stronghold of memory of the past. I was filled with bitterness, frustration, and fear. I trusted no one, not even my own son. I was a different person today. Home was still important to me, but now it was no longer a refuge from the world, but a place where I could host friends, build new relationships, create new memories. I was active, involved in the community, open to new opportunities. I had friends, hobbies, a woman who understood me and accepted me for who I was, and yes, there was Nathaniel. Our relationship was still complicated with the weight of past hurts and misunderstandings, but for the first time in a long time, I saw the potential for growth, for healing. We were both changing, finding our way, building new lives. And maybe in those new lives, we could find a place for each other. Not as before, but in a new way, in a healthier way. I stared out the window at the starry sky, remembering the words Elizabeth liked to repeat. Life is too short to waste it on regrets. She was right, as always. Life is indeed short, And I was no longer going to waste it on regrets about the past or fear of the future. I was here now, alive and relatively healthy. I had my house, my projects, my new relationships. I had Marilyn, Rusty, Roger, and other friends. And yes, I still had Nathaniel, no matter how complicated our past had been. I raised my glass in a silent toast to life, to its unpredictable twists and turns and unexpected gifts. Here's to the fact that at 66 I could start over and discover that the best part of the journey might still be ahead of me. Rusty came over and laid his head in my lap, looking up with his intelligent eyes. I petted him, feeling grateful for this loyal companion, for his unconditional love. "What do you think, buddy?" I asked quietly. "Not bad for an old man, huh?" Rusty wagged his tail in agreement, and I laughed. "Yeah, not bad for an old man. Not bad for a man who thought his best days were behind him." I was no longer a lonely, embittered old man living in the past. I was Willis Prescott, master of my own destiny, builder of my new life, and for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to what tomorrow would bring.